Today we're going to start day one notes on misleading graphs, categorical versus quantitative data, bar, and pie graphs. The first part of your notes is going to talk about the different types of data. We have categorical data, which places an individual into a category such as gender, eye color, grade level, or where you were born. Categorical data can also be numbers like a zip code as long as it's not something that's measured or counted. Quantitative data is a numerical value such as height, weight, GPA, or a pulse rate. Any quantitative data can be counted or measured in some way. And you can always think to yourself, can you take an average of it and does it make sense? The first example we're going to look at is what is your favorite color? So if a survey was taken and 10 people responded that blue was their favorite color, 6 people responded that red was their favorite color, 8 people responded green, and 2 people responded yellow. We're going to use that information to make a bar graph. So here's our bar graph. When you look at the bar graph, there's a few things that every bar graph has. It has to have a title. Both the X and Y axis have to be labeled, in this case with color, and then counts, which is just the number of people that were surveyed. And then you look at the bars. Notice that each bar should be the same width, and then they're evenly spaced as you go through the bar graph. The labels are written out clearly, both on the X and Y, so you can see how many counts there are and see what the different colors are. And that's really a bar graph. When we're trying to find a circle graph or a pie graph, that's a little bit more complicated. We're going to start off by finding, first of all, the total number of respondents to the survey. In this case, it's 26. So we get that by adding 10, 6, 8, and 2. Once we do that, we have to find the percent of each category. In order to do that, we're just going to do some division. So you take the number of people that responded blue divided by the total, and then I'm going to have you round that to the nearest whole percent. Do that for each one of the colors, and at the end you should end up with 100%. If for some reason this doesn't end up being 100%, it might be 99% or 101%, just depending on whether or not there was a rounding mistake or if just the way the rounding worked off it was off a little bit. If that ever does happen, I want you to take the largest percentage and either add one or subtract one to that and make sure that it's 100% total. Once you have all the percentages down, then what you're going to do is take your circle and just estimate where those are going to go. It doesn't have to be precise. I don't need you to measure it with the protractor. But what I like to do is just divide it in half this way and then divide it in half this way, just very lightly with your pencil. And then you can go and divide each one of those parts in half. And each one of these will be 12.5%. So if we start at 0, this would be 12.5% to go to there. Then this is 25%. And then again, just another 12.5% all the way around the circle. So when I start off saying that this is 38, I know that's 25. And if I add 12.5, that's going to be 37.5, so it's just a little bit more than that. So that's 38. I can look at my red that's 23 and say that's just a little less than 25%. And then the last two are green and yellow, and I'm just going to estimate where those are going to be. The important thing here is that it has a title, and that when you put the color in each one of the spaces, you also include the percent. So even if it's not exactly correct size, we know what the percentage is as long as it's close. Next, we're going to take a look at a graph that might be a little bit deceiving or misleading. If we look at this graph, the first thing I want you to do is take a look and make sure that everything is there that belongs in every graph. We have a title where it's sales by quarter. We have the sales in thousands of dollars. We have the quarters down here, fourth, first, second, and third. When we look at this, there's a couple of things that are misleading. The first thing that pops out to me is if I look at the quarters, they're not put in order. This makes it look like as you're going on, the sales are getting better, when in fact the fourth quarter has the worst sales. The second thing that's wrong with this is the graph starts at 90,000. if you look at the way the graph looks, it looks like this is a very small amount, that this is maybe 2 or 3 times as much, this is 4 or 5 times as much, and this might be 6 or 7 times as much. When in actuality, if you go from 92 up to 115, it's really not that much more. So in order to make this graph a little bit better, there's a few things that we should do. Okay, so here's a graph that's probably a little bit better. It still has the title, it's sales by quarter, sales in thousands of dollars, the quarter down here, but now we put the quarters so that they're in order so that we can see when the trend as things are going through time. The other thing is that you should start it at 0. Every bar graph you do should start at 0. That way you have that idea of how high each one is relative to each other, so it doesn't look like there's a big difference in them. So always start at 0. You're going to have to scale the axis appropriately so that you can get all of the data on there. Notice that at the bottom of the graph, they're evenly spaced, and also notice that they're all the same width. Now we can see here that there's really not that much difference between the graphs, and that's why the other graph was misleading. Well, that's going to be the end of your first day notes. So you can go ahead and review this as you need and work on the homework.